Alright, this is my 2005 Lexus GS300. And all of its glory, as you can see, it's 4 distinct headlights, it's 4 doors, and it's distinct back end with the double light suspension. As you can see, I have a little bit of a transformer thing. That's just a personal thing for me, but I think that a good way to think about this car, for me at least, is the journey I've had with it. And I should say more or less the journey I've had with all of my cars. And I'll get inside of it. I'm gonna warn you, it's a little bit dirty, but you know what? That's just how I roll. Lexus logo, Apple, everything in the car, it's beautiful in here. Beautiful. And I think that's what made me fall in love with this car. And I think that's what, like, all of the things I've done in my life have gone to, like, a different point, if that makes sense. Like, when I was a sophomore in high school, I stole my parents' car and crashed it, right? And after that day, I was petrified and literally just, I could not drive. Every time I'd be in a car, I would get anxious and I'd slam my foot down on the floor if my mom got too close to a car. She would even tease me by getting really close and making my anxiety go up. But it took me a while for me to get used to driving, and it even came to a point where my parents had to force me to drive. And they told me, you drive or else I'm taking away your phone. And I'm like, all right. But from that day, I learned to love driving. I learned that, like, driving was great. But, like, at that point, it was very new to me. I didn't really know how driving would be considered, like, an art form, more or less just kind of like, oh, here is a thing you have to do. Yeah, you get to listen to music and you get to cruise around and see sights, but that's about it, right? I liked driving with my friends. My friends, when they had cars, they would drive us around New Mexico late at night, and it was great. We got to listen to music, talk, laugh, explore. It was great, but I didn't fall in love with driving personally. I fell in love with what I saw in the music I listened to. I didn't fall in love with driving, right? But COVID hit, and the only thing you could do was drive. So I just drove, and I drove forever and ever and ever. And then one day, it's my sister's birthday. I go to the Hamas because that was my sister's wish. We come back and my car's gone. And I'm like, oh no. And the realization set in, someone stole my car. And that feeling of not having a car and going back to what you were not accustomed to, because at that point, I was already feeling happy that I didn't have to walk anymore and that I finally got used to driving, and I actually started to enjoy driving rather than being petrified. But at that point, it was just a very low point in my life, and I was like, wow, I really just got my car stolen. I can't see my friends anymore. I went a month without seeing anyone, and even though this was during COVID, me and my friends were very safe, and we've spent time with each other only at our houses just to make sure we were safe. But it was a very alone time, especially since I couldn't, like, escape and go out and, like, see things like I used to. I was kind of stuck at home, right? And then one day, my parents let me drive their car. It's a big 12-seater van, and I fell in love with driving again, and it was great. But the thing is, it wasn't my car. I didn't work for the car. I didn't do anything to make the car mine. It was my parents' car, and I had to ask them to drive it everywhere. I couldn't just pick it up and go, right? And the entire time I had the car, I would always try to go and on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace and see what cars they had to offer. And I'd always pester my dad, like, hey, can I buy this Mustang? And his answer would always be, no, you cannot buy this Mustang, Alex. I'm sorry. It's a little expensive, and I don't want you crashing, and, typical dad things. So I got my car stolen on April 18th, actually, and I believe in 9 months, I finally was able to find a car. It was this car right here, a Lexus GS300. And I had known about cars for a while. I'm a little bit of a car guy, and I knew that this car came with a really desirable engine, a 2JZ GT-E, right? Or really the GE, the less powerful version. But even still, it's a great desirable engine, and I knew that. And when I saw it on Facebook Marketplace for $4,500, I told my dad that, and I told him, hey, Dad, it's a Lexus, it's Toyota's luxury brand, so it has the reliability, and that got his eyes wide, like, oh, reliable car? Okay. So we went to go check it out, and we drove it around, and it was amazing. It was smooth, clean. Only problem is the radio kind of sucked, and if you went over 70 miles an hour, the car started shaking. And when my dad found that out, he did not want me to buy the car. He said it was a bad idea and to keep on looking. But at that point, I was kind of dead set. I was like, I love the color. I love, like, the look of the car. I love the engine. I love what I can do with it. And I love, the sunroof, which is, well, it's fantastic. I'll be honest. Sunroofs are great. But we had to go and do all that, right? And eventually it took me convincing my dad a whole heck of a lot that it's probably just the tires being bald and that I can just fix it right away. And you know what? We bought it. We kind of lowballed him. He offered it for $4,500. We discussed the problems that the car had with the tires and the shaking, and he brought it down to $3,200. We agreed. I paid fully in cash, which was a big step for me. I believe the reason that I started to drift more into liking this car more and more was because I paid for it. My hard-earned money went to buying this car and making it my own. And I learned a long way that hard work does pay off for the things that you get, which is this car for me. But I remember I wasn't able to drive this car for a really long time. I had to wait, I believe it was an entire month. I bought this car on December 20th, December 21st, and I got it registered on January 22nd, so a month and a day. And when we had to drive to the west side because all the DMVs were closed, and when we got it registered, I remember driving back and being so excited that when I got home to put on the license plate, I broke one of the screws off, and to this day, one of the screws is still inside, but we don't talk about that. And I had a car now, and it was my car. It was a car that I could appreciate and that I could love, but it was still brand new to me. I didn't know how it would work. It was way more powerful than my first car. My first car was a Toyota Corolla. That was very, very slow. It was a nice, comfortable car, but it was very slow. This car, it's not super fast, but it'll get you going. And I remember showing my friends, and their initial reaction is, "This is super ugly." And then they'd get inside the car and they'd be like, "Wow, this is nice. Leather seats, leather bucket seats, heated, beautiful sound system. Everything was great." And we just fell in love with this car. And it wasn't just me. All of my friends now love this car. Yeah, they loved my parents' van because it was big and spacious, but they liked how my sunroof would open and they could stick their bodies out of it and go down the highway and be happy like that. Or the sound system would be great, or they'd fall asleep in the back seats. They learned to love it. But I learned that I can have fun with a car. And I learned that I can treat a car like a person. And I learned this only through trial and error. When I first got the car, tires were bald. I replaced the tires, got an oil change. Then I curbed the wheels, so I had to go get new rims, right? Which was a lot of money. Then my car battery died. I had to buy a new battery. All these things led for me getting this car fixed up. And along that journey, I learned to appreciate it more and more and more. And I think that the biggest point of me trying to do this was tracking my miles that I would get on this car. And like, for me, I was very stressed my senior year towards the end when I had this car. So my only real source of therapy was getting in this car and driving around New Mexico in like a specific loop I had, listening to music and just smiling, knowing that I'm in full control. And I think that's what car guys really like try to understand or get people to understand, is that a car isn't just a car. Yeah, it gets you from point A to point B. It isn't a person. It can't make you laugh. It can't make you smile. But not in a interactive way. This car has made me laugh, made me scream for joy. It has made me super happy, on the verge of tears. Whenever this car gets broken and I have to wait for it to get fixed, when I finally get it fixed and I get back in here, I always hit the steering wheel and I scream, "Yes! Yes, I missed it. I missed you. I personify this car as a person, because I believe that this car treats me a lot better than a lot of other people do. It's reliable. Whatever I do to it, it responds right back. It's not unpredictable. It won't do anything wrong or weird. It's just a great vehicle. And I fell in love driving around New Mexico, listening to music, counting up the miles. And within a year, I have put on 15,000 miles. A single year, 15,000 miles. And it's all around a great car, and I highly recommend it to anyone. But I learned a lesson. I learned that cars, they're fun, but like, you have to really enjoy driving, and you have to enjoy knowing that you can have full control in a car, and that car can turn from just a mere piece of metal with four wheels into your best friend and someone that you can rely on and something that you will always be happy to be a part of. And yeah, that is my creative reflection for Composition 1110. Thank you so much.